There's a moment at the end of a long day when the world finally stops asking anything of you. The sun has slipped behind the buildings, the last messages have been answered, and the room is lit only by the faint glow of dusk. It should feel peaceful. It should feel like relief. But instead, something inside tightens. You sit there, alone, quiet, and the silence gathers around you like a presence you don't quite know how to face. Your hands move restlessly, tapping the table, adjusting nothing in particular. Your eyes drift toward your phone. That familiar lifeline, as if reaching for it might steady the unease rising in your chest. You don't pick it up. Not yet. But the impulse is strong. That pull toward distraction, toward noise, toward anything that fills the growing space around you. Because the moment the outer world quiets, the inner world begins to stir. Thoughts scramble for your attention, little scraps of conversation, unfinished worries, memories you didn't ask for. They rush in to fill the silence, to keep you company, to protect you from whatever waits underneath. And you can feel your mind searching, grasping for something to latch onto, anything to avoid the bare simplicity of just being here. This is the part we rarely talk about. The discomfort of silence, the way it exposes us. Because silence, real silence, doesn't let you hide. It doesn't soften the edges or blur the truths. It holds up a mirror, steady and unapologetic, and it shows you the things you've been running from, the tiredness you haven't admitted, the emotions you've been burying, the ache you've been ignoring, and so we avoid it. We fill rooms with background noise. We keep conversations alive long past their natural end. We scroll, we click, we reach for the nearest distraction. Not because we're bored, but because we're afraid of what might rise in the quiet. But here's the strange paradox. The silence we fear so much is the only place we actually meet life. Not the life we narrate, not the life we analyze, not the life we plan or remember or compare, the life that's happening right now, before the words, beneath the thoughts, within the breath. You can almost sense it in these few seconds of stillness, just beneath the discomfort, a soft presence, a tenderness, something waiting, not to overwhelm you, but to greet you, something that feels strangely like truth. You exhale, a little slower this time. The light in the room shifts. The silence doesn't seem quite as threatening now, but it isn't familiar either. It stands beside you like a quiet visitor, patient and unhurried. You realize, without fully understanding why, that there is something here, something worth listening to, something deeper than the noise you've grown used to carry. And for the first time all day, you stop running. Hold this moment gently, because this is where the real dilemma begins. There comes a point, usually sometime after the world has quieted down, when the noise returns. Only this time it isn't coming from outside. It's coming from you. The moment the TV clicks off, the notifications fade. The last conversation ends. Something inside begins to scramble for the next distraction. You can feel it in your own body, that subtle tightening in the chest, the impulse to fill the empty space with anything, music, chatter, a scroll through your device, even a meaningless comment tossed into the air just to keep silence from settling. It happens almost automatically, like a reflex you never chose, but learned somewhere along the way. And if you pay attention, you'll notice something unsettling. The more uncomfortable the truth inside you is, the louder the noise you reach for. We don't talk constantly because we have so much to say. We talk because silence shows us things we don't want to see. People often believe noise is neutral, a harmless buffer between moments But noise, inner and outer, isn't just a habit, it's a shield, a suit of armor we strap onto ourselves every morning, trying to keep the world from getting too close, and trying even harder to keep ourselves from looking inward. Watch how people behave when silence enters a room. Voice rises quickly, laughter becomes a little too sharp. Someone comments on the weather or asks a question that doesn't matter. It's not communication. It's escape, a shared pact. Let's not feel what's here. Let's not face whatever this silence is trying to reveal. And you've done it too. Everyone has. Think of the last time you sat with someone you care about. A partner, a friend, a family member. Do remember how quickly you felt the urge to speak, the moment the conversation paused, that quick reach for words. Not because something meaningful needed to be said, but because stillness made you feel exposed. We fill the air to avoid intimacy. We chatter to stay safe, because if the silence lasts too long, something true might show itself. And the truth has a way of feeling dangerous. It asks for honesty. It asks for presence. It asks for the kind of vulnerability our fast-moving, overstimulated world doesn't train us for. So instead, we drown ourselves in stimulation. When we're alone, the distractions multiply. Music in the background, videos playing one after another, podcasts filling the room, scrolling endlessly just to avoid the moment the mind goes quiet enough for something real to surface. You can walk through an entire day without once meeting yourself. And at first, it feels easier. Noise gives you the comforting illusion of movement. The constant mental chatter makes you feel like you're doing something, heading somewhere, keeping the inner chaos at bay. But underneath, something starts to crack. You begin to feel tired, not the kind of tired sleep fixes, but the psychological exhaustion of running from yourself, the fatigue of always staying one step ahead of your own feelings. You sense a kind of fragmentation, like you're scattered across dozens of thoughts, conversations, notifications, and anxieties. Yet somehow absent from all of them, there's a moment when you realize you haven't been fully present in your own life for a long time. Silence becomes the enemy. Noise becomes the armor. And yet, that armor grows heavier by the day. Watch people in a busy cafe or on a crowded train. They're surrounded by others, yet holding their phones like shields. Not because they're busy, most aren't, but because empty hands feel too naked. Eyes without a task feel too exposed. Noise protects them from the simple reality of being alive in a moment without distraction. It's a strange paradox. The more we avoid silence, the more disconnected we become from ourselves, from others, from the world unfolding right in front of us. Our minds become fogged with commentary, judging, comparing, predicting, rewinding, performing. The inner narrator speaks so quickly, so insistently, that we begin mistaking it for reality itself. But commentary is not presence, and inner chatter, that constant stream of thought that races through your mind, doesn't just distort your experience, it replaces it. You stop seeing what is and start living in what you imagine, fear, or expect. Noise keeps you safe from your truth, but it keeps you from your life as well. Consider how rarely people sit in true, wordless companionship. Most conversations are two monologues taking turns, not listening, not receiving, just waiting for the next chance to speak. Noise again, armor again. And the cost is subtle but devastating. You lose the ability to feel the world directly. At some point, if you're brave enough to look honestly, you sense an unmistakable tension building under the surface. You feel the weight of all the moments you never allowed yourself to experience fully, all the emotions you talked over, All the insights drowned out before they could rise. Something inside begins to whisper that you cannot keep running forever. And maybe it happens during a small, ordinary moment. Maybe you're sitting at the edge of your bed after a long day, holding your phone, scrolling without purpose. Maybe it's late at night when you turn off the last light and the quiet rushes in. Maybe it's during a conversation where you suddenly realize you have nothing real to say, and haven't for a long time. There's a heaviness in the chest, a recognition, a small, painful honesty. I am afraid to be silent because I don't know what I'll find. This is the dilemma, the tension, the emotional knot. At the heart of the whole struggle, noise protects you from yourself, but it's suffocating you at the same time. And as this truth becomes harder to ignore, something begins to shift. A tiny opening, a subtle crack in the armor, a question you can no longer push away. What would happen if I stopped running from silence? Hold that question gently, because this is where there comes a moment, often quiet, often unplanned, when the noise finally collapses, not because you willed it to, and not because you learned some special technique, but simply because you no longer have the energy to outrun yourself. Maybe it happens in the early morning, when the world hasn't woken yet and the light is still soft and undecided. Maybe it comes after a long walk, when your thoughts have exhausted themselves and your breath is louder than your worries. Or maybe it arrives after tears, when emotion has emptied you out enough that silence finally has room to enter. Whatever form it takes, there's a delicate instant when the usual commentary hesitates, and in that pause, something unfamiliar begins to bloom. A stillness you didn't ask for, a presence you didn't expect, a kind of quiet that feels less like absence and more like a gentle arrival. At first, it can feel unsettling, almost eerie, because it's not the silence you're used to, not the silence of boredom, not the silence between noises, not the silence you try to fill. This silence has texture, it has weight, it has a warmth to it, like soft light after a storm, illuminating everything without saying a word. And if you stay with it, even for a breath, you realize something profound. Silence isn't empty. Silence is honest. It's the one place where nothing is pretending, nothing is performing, nothing is demanding anything from you. This silence doesn't chase you, doesn't judge you, doesn't ask you to be better than you are. It simply waits, patient, steady, is spacious. You begin to sense that this quiet isn't the opposite of noise. It's the ground beneath it, the moment before sound, the stillness out of which everything rises and into which everything falls. You notice the room differently. The light feels softer, your breath feels real again. Not something narrated, not something managed, just a simple, living movement within you. This is the beginning of the shift, because for the first time in a long time, you're not listening to your thoughts about the moment. You're listening to the moment itself. There's a Zen story about a young monk who asked his master, "What is silence?" The master didn't answer with philosophy or explanation. He simply placed a teacup on the table, then lifted it again. The young monk frowned, confused, and the master said, "When you heard the cup touch the wood, that was sound. But what you felt just before that moment, that is silence. It's not a vacuum. It's not the lack of something. It's the presence before all presences, the awareness behind every experience, the space in which everything appears. When you encounter this kind of silence, truly encounter it, the boundaries you've drawn around yourself begin to soften. The distinction between you and the world becomes less defined, not in a mystical sense, but in a deeply human way. The distance you thought was there, the space between your breath and the breath of the world, starts to dissolve. You become less of an observer looking at life and more of a participant moving within it. And suddenly, the world seems to awaken. Colors appear richer, not because they changed, but because you finally stop filtering them through thought. The air feels different on your skin. Sounds have depth. Faces have stories in their stillness. Not in their words. Even the silence has tones. Layers you never noticed before. Life becomes vivid the moment you stop trying to explain it. This is the realization at the heart of it all. Your thoughts about life are never as alive as life itself. When the commentary quiets, just a little, awareness expands. And in that expansion, you sense something you may have forgotten. Since childhood, the world doesn't need your narration to exist. It is already full, already complete, already shimmering with detail and presence. You start to recognize how much of your suffering came from living inside the narrow corridor of your own mind. Not because the mind is wrong or bad, but because it was never meant to be the whole of your experience. It's a tool, a companion, a narrator, but it is not the world. Silence shows you this by letting the world through again. You might sit by a window one morning and find yourself enraptured by the simple movement of shadows on the floor. You might hear the faint hum of distant traffic and feel, for the first time, the mysterious depth of existence itself. You might look at a loved one and see, not their story, not your expectations, not the roles you play, but the actual human being in front of you. Presence replaces commentary, and the most surprising thing is how natural it feels. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to achieve some special state. In fact, the less effort you make, the clearer everything becomes. Silence does the work. All you have to do is allow it. There's an emotional relief that comes with this, a loosening of a long-held tension you didn't know you were carrying. The chest opens, the breath flows deeper, the eyes soften. What felt threatening now feels tender. What felt empty now feels full. You begin to trust the silence, and in trusting it, something beautiful unfolds. You begin to trust yourself again, because beneath all the noise, all the commentary, all the frantic mental activity, there is a place inside you that is calm, steady, awake, not as an idea, not as a belief, but as a direct experience, a quiet center that doesn't vanish when the world becomes loud again. This is the shift. This is the moment your relationship with silence changes forever. And when it does, a new question arises. Not from fear, but from curiosity. If silence can feel this alive, what else have I overlooked by talking over it? Hold that thought gently. Let it settle. Let it open a doorway. Because the next step is learning how to live from this silence, not just visit it. When the realization settles, the one that arrives softly, like morning light across a quiet room, you begin to notice that silence feels different now. It no longer stands at the edge of your life like a shadow waiting to swallow you. Instead, it moves closer, warmer, almost familiar, like someone you once knew but forgot how to greet. There is a gentleness to it now, a steadiness, a sense of returning, and as you move through your days, with this new understanding, something subtle begins to change. Life, which once felt muffled by inner commentary, starts to reveal itself in sharper, more vivid tones. Colors deepen, textures feel more real beneath your fingertips. Even the air carries a kind of quiet richness you never noticed before. This happens because you're no longer narrating every moment as it unfolds. You're simply living it. You taste your food without explaining it to yourself. You walk without planning the next 10 steps. You breathe without needing to control the rhythm. The world doesn't need interpretation to be beautiful. It never did. You start to feel the shift most clearly in your relationships. There are moments, the small ones, but unmistakable, where you sit with someone you love and realize you no longer feel pressured to fill the air with words. The silence between you isn't tense anymore. It's it's tender. It allows you both to settle deeper into yourselves, and in doing so, closer to each other. This is the paradox most people never discover. Silence doesn't separate. Silence connects. It removes the fog of performance, the mental choreography of what should I say next or how do I sound. It frees you from pretending. And it frees others from needing to pretend with you. In silence, you begin to see people not as characters in a conversation, but as living, breathing presences, full of their own depth, their own quiet storms, their own hidden tenderness. The world becomes a little more human, and so do you. There's a moment, maybe on an ordinary morning, when you look around your home and everything appears just slightly more in focus. The mug on the table, the dust on the windowsill, the movement of shadows across the floor, these small, unremarkable details feel strangely intimate, as if the world has been waiting for you to notice it. This is what returning home to yourself feels like. It isn't dramatic. It isn't loud. It's a soft click of alignment, a shift in the center of your being. And the most beautiful part, you don't have to earn it. You don't have to master anything. You don't have to force your mind into silence or discipline yourself into stillness. You just allow the world to exist without constant interference. You allow yourself to exist without constant evaluation. You allow each moment to be exactly what it is. And in that allowing, you begin to see that silence was never the enemy. It was the doorway, the quiet companion, the mirror that showed reality without distortion, the space in which the world could finally breathe through you rather than around you. This doesn't mean the mind stops talking forever. It won't. It doesn't need to. Silence doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't ask you to banish thought or conquer the ego. It asks only that you stop mistaking the voice in your head for the whole of who you are. It asks for a little space, a little openness, a little willingness to listen beneath the surface. And when you do, you discover that silence isn't a punishment or a test. It's an invitation to feel the world again, to feel yourself again, to step out of the relentless stream of commentary and into the living moment that has been waiting for you all along. So you sit for a while, maybe by a window, maybe outside, maybe in the middle of a busy day, and you let the quiet rise, not forced, not sharpened by effort, just allowed, and in that gentle allowing, you sense a widening inside you, like the horizon pulling back to reveal more sky. You realize there is nowhere to get to, nothing to fix, nothing to escape. There is only this breath, this moment, this simple, una dorned aliveness, and as you feel it, perhaps for the first time in a long time, a question drifts through you, not loud, not demanding, but soft and honest. What else might I discover if I stopped talking over my own life? Let that question stay with you. Let it move with you. Let it open quietly. The way dawn opens the day. There is no conclusion here. No final leçon. Just an invitation into the silence that has always been waiting. A silence ready to walk with you. A silence ready to show you, moment by moment,